Good morning. We're a couple minutes early here today. I want to welcome you to the Eco-Inspired Living Green Show, Green Home Show. And it's pretty exciting today. We've got a great guest. And I just wanted to share a little bit about some of the past shows. Last week, Marsha came on, and it was an amazing journey with us. She talked about the Singing Tree Project. We brought the 85th singing tree to Pakistan, and it was a peace tree, and we brought it to classroom in Pakistan, and we were able to bring an amazing amount of kids together with heirloom seeds along with the Singing Tree Project. So we have co-partnered in quite a few things, Lori and I, and we're going to continue to work with schools and education. Her artistic quality and her understanding of children, it's a great show. So you can see that show on Eco-Inspired Living. And then we also had the Saving Water show. And we talked about solar sprinklers. And I just want to bring that up. You know, my son worked on the solar sprinklers. It was an amazing opportunity for you to really look at water and how you save water. And so it's a solar sprinkler, and it directs your sprinkler right onto the grass where you want. So it doesn't go out into the sidewalks and all. So you can find all of that information on our Actions of Impact. Now, Actions of Impact started, if you're new to the show, Actions of Impact started for Earth Day this year, where my son came in. He's a solar engineer, and he and I have been working on projects together for this, and it's been so exciting. And, you know, the solar sprinklers were so exciting. We brought about an idea about zero waste, and B. Johnson, we brought up a couple of books. B. Johnson wrote a book, and we also, in Marin County, we have green energy, Marin green energy. And so we have a choice to have solar in our homes. As you start looking at what we've done in the last few weeks, we've kind of moved from, Robert came on. First, we started with Marsha with Feng Shui. We had Marsha Cheung, Golangco, and she did Feng Shui for your home, and it was an amazing journey. And then we had our wonderful Eco Tapper. And so we talked about essential oils, and today I'm using a couple of different oils. Valor is just a really great oil, so we've been using that. And Penny Norke talked about tapping and oils, essential oils. So when we moved from that area, I just want to share a little bit about the torch. Torch on Earth Day, we committed to planting 10 million seeds in the hands of 1 million children. So that's our pledge this year. Last year, we had a pledge to move forward in Actions of Impact for torch seeds, and we've had our website up, so it's pretty exciting. So I feel like the show is happening. And for the last 3 weeks, we've had some really great ideas happening. We've had the Orgasmic Kitchen with Marcy Hofsky, and she's up north right now at French Meadows with a group of people going camping. And French Meadows held a summer camp for many years. And so some of the elders that we're going to bring on Ed Esko today, but some of the elders of these early years are amazing people that helped all of us learn and grow and expand our understanding on macrobiotics. So we had Alex Jack, and he talked about planetary health. And so I just want to put that website up because I think Ed will also talk about planetary health. He's been a big contributor. Alex talked about the pandemic, and it's worth going back to see his show. It really touched me in such a deep way to really look at the chemicals and the energy around, you know, toxic chemicals in our land and how the animals and all of us are affected by these toxic chemicals. The next week, we had our beautiful Bettina. Bettina talked about, Zoom Deck talked about the culinary work that she's doing in culinary medicine, but she really talked about our liver health. And I think when we start looking at liver and we start looking at liver function to minimize pandemic risk, you know, Alex came on to show us a little bit of the cause. Bettina came in and talked to us about the liver function. And today, Ed Esko is going to be talking about the natural immunity and how macrobiotics, can really support the immunity. So I'm going to bring him onto the show. I'm just thrilled to have him on Green Home. And I just want to give you a little history before he pops up. Ed and I go back a lot of years. I met Ed and Alex through One Peaceful World magazine. They were working on that for many years, and I popped in and I worked for them advertising wise. And it's been a long journey. We haven't seen each other recently, so it's exciting to have him. So here he is. Ed Esko, welcome to the show.
Lynn, it's nice to see you again.
I can't hear you.
Hello.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I can hear you. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. And, we've been talking about, you saw a little bit about what our show's been about. And I'm excited to, just have you here. And what have you been up to recently? What have you been up to? Tell us a little bit before I let you have this full screen.
We have an online school called the International Macrobiotic Institute, IMI.
Excellent.
And we have students all over the world, from Vietnam to the Middle East, Europe, all the United States and Canada. So we're very busy with that. We have regular online classes. We have levels of training, level 1, 2, and 3.
Fantastic.
So that's keeping us quite busy, plus new books. All the time publications are coming out. So we've been quite busy. And also the epidemic has made us even more busy now, because the tie-in is so clear and so obvious between food and immunity, and food and whether or not this is an issue for us. So it's a very clear and actually, it's something for us to become active even more and promote even more our plant-based approach.
100%. I started in 1987 with you folks, and Joel Woolner is here. He lives near me, and so we often have lunch. We had another friend from Sweden that was here, or Norway, and she was here. So, and then our store is influenced by Mitra and Aveline here, Good Earth. And so that's pretty exciting. So our whole town where we live is all macrobiotic influence. It's really great. It's really wonderful. We're very lucky. All the restaurants are macrobiotic. It's just been great. So we're really lucky. Great. So let me let you have the screen. I appreciate you coming on. And if there's anything you need, I'll be able to hear you. Okay. And I'm looking forward to your talk on natural immunity, a macrobiotic approach. And if you need anything, I'll pop back up.
Okay. Great, Lynn. How long would you like us to go on this side?
Would you like Naomi to come on as well?
Naomi's busy with chores stuff, so no.
Okay. Okay, she's on the screen. If you do want her to pop in, let me know and I can hear you. Okay. So let me know. Okay, so I look forward to it, and maybe 40 minutes.
That's fine. Okay.
Okay.
So you let me know when I've gone over my.
Okay, no problem. All right. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. Okay. Blessings.
All right. So as Lynn mentioned, our talk today is on diet and immunity. And immunity is the key point when it comes to our ability to resist and avoid any type of viral or bacterial infection. So I want everyone to write the word diet if you have a piece of paper and a pen. And on the other side of the page, please write immunity. And then in between those two, in between diet and immunity, please write another word called the biome, B-I-O-M-E. Or if you like, the microbiome. And what is this microbiome? Well, this microbiome is a vast ecosystem living in each of our bodies, composed of about I know it sounds staggering, but about 1 trillion the bacteria, microorganisms. And the microorganisms living mostly in the digestive tract are, for the most part, beneficial. So the estimate is about 85% of those, the microorganisms, are performing very beneficial and helpful functions nonstop, including helping with digestion, helping with assimilation, helping with the production of important vitamins, including B12, and perhaps most importantly, the helping with our body's immune system. And then about 15% of those microorganisms have the potential to go negative, so to speak. In other words, they can become pathological if the conditions are leading that or causing that to happen. So don't forget this ratio. Please write down 85% beneficial bacteria. Now, this is 100 trillion bacteria we're talking about. It's staggering. Sounds a little bit like the U.S. debt, national debt. These figures are astronomical. Anyway, 85% the positive, 15% potentially either opportunistic or potentially negative. So that ratio, 85 to 15, if you break it down, it comes out to 7 to 1. 7 times the beneficial bacteria versus 1 part, 7 parts beneficial versus 1 part potentially harmful. Please remember that ratio, 7 to 1, because we're going to see it again as we talk today. And we're going to see that that 7 to 1 ratio is actually quite important in terms of the composition, not only of our internal microbiome, but also the composition of our macrobiome. That means what we're taking in from the outside, especially in the form of food. So please don't forget that. So this microbiome is largely inhabiting the body's digestive tract. And internal, the inside of that digestive tract, don't forget the microbiome is actually not inside the body. It's in the cavity of the digestive system, which is actually external. It's not until nutrients are absorbed through the small intestine or absorbed into the bloodstream that things enter the inside of the body, okay? So right on the other side of that wall, internally, lies the body's immune system. And about approximately 80% or so, perhaps it's 85, 7 to 1, but they currently are estimating about 80% of the body's immune cells are in the digestive tract as well. All right, so you have this one side of the barrier, external is the biome, 100 trillion, the bacteria, okay? And then on the other side of that wall is the internal part of our body, okay? And here you have 80% of the body's natural immune cells, okay? So of course, there is a very close relationship between the two. And in fact, it's well known, becoming increasingly well known, that the condition of the microbiome has a direct impact on the body's immune response, immune cells. And the immune cells have a direct impact on the composition and health of the microbiome. All right? So this is the foundation. This will be the foundation of our understanding of what the best food, the best diet, and the best lifestyle is to build up our biome and thus build up our immunity, okay? So let's go back then to our diet. Well, in macrobiotics, we divide foods into 2 giant categories. When I say foods, what I'm talking about primarily is the biological world itself. In other words, organic matter, living things that we consume. So the two giant categories are the entire realm of plants, fruits, seeds, nuts, vegetables, grains, fungi, okay, etc., mushrooms, right, etc. In other words, vegetable foods as one huge category. And then the opposite to that is what we call animal food. That means living creatures, either in the ocean or on land or in the air. Okay. Plant food and animal food. Each of these types of food has a completely different, I should even say opposite, effect on the microbiome and on the body's natural immune response. Okay. One of these categories, and I'll ask you to guess which one, has the very beneficial effect, supporting the health of the beneficial bacteria while limiting the growth and activity of the potentially harmful bacteria. The other category has the effect of, opposite, of suppressing the beneficial bacteria while nourishing, providing food for the potentially harmful bacteria. All right. And then we'll see that plays a very important role in the body's immune response, because the body's immune system is there, ever vigilant, to prevent these harmful bacteria from proliferating. Okay. So which category does which? Well, it's pretty obvious. Carbon-based plant foods, carbohydrate-based foods, have the effect of enhancing the beneficial bacteria in the microbiome. Nitrogen-based animal proteins, something like fertilizer, acting like fertilizer to stimulate the potentially harmful bacteria. And as those potentially harmful bacteria proliferate beyond their 15% ceiling, then they begin to overwhelm the beneficial bacteria. Okay? So this is very important. So from this understanding, carbon versus nitrogen, carbohydrate versus protein, plant versus animal, we can begin to see, in terms of our microbiome, plant food should be very much the majority of what we eat day to day. And animal food, if we decide to include it at all, should be the minority, always in the minority. Okay. Plant should be the background, animal food should be occasional. Okay. So maybe we all know the hotspots for the COVID-19 infection. Where were they? Well, there's no denying meat packing facilities, meat packing plants. Not only the actual facility or the factory, but also the surrounding community. These were hotspots for COVID-19 infection and even death. And we also know that this particular virus, novel coronavirus, is very much suspected to have originated in the bodies of animals, especially nocturnal carnivores, which we refer to as bats, right? Bats are living in the darkness all the time, living in the caves, sleeping in the cave during the day, and active hunting at night. This particular type of bat is called the horseshoe bat, and it's an insect-eating bat. Okay, so eating very condensed animal food. So this animal origin is undeniable. And the connection between an animal, a virus that originates within an animal's body and jumps to the human species. Because, right, because the consumption of animal food in people who are susceptible is weakening, diminishing their natural immune power and ability to avoid and resist that virus. That is the view. And our view is that if people were eating primarily a plant-based diet, and we're going to see the ratio again is close to a 7-to-1 ratio. In other words, 7 parts plant food to 1 part animal food. And by the way, when I talk about animal food, for the majority of the world's population, that doesn't mean land animals. That means primarily ocean or water-dwelling creatures. The fish, right? Or shellfish or those type, the animal foods, versus the birds, versus the mammals. Okay. If that 7-to-1 ratio is maintained, then the immune function of the body is quite able and capable of canceling and neutralizing virus and bacteria from the outside. So even if someone is exposed, then their immune system will immediately neutralize that, and then they don't get infected. Okay, unless they're in a very extreme and unusual situation. For example, working in a hospital, okay, or working in a prison, okay, or living in the town where many people are working in meatpacking facilities. Okay. So let's summarize then. The plant food and animal food. Plant food will help strengthen the microbiome, and in so doing, will strengthen the body's immune function. Okay, and the basis of plant food is carbohydrate. Okay, and the basis of carbohydrate is carbon. Whereas animal food, you know, when someone eats a chicken wing, what is that? That is nothing but protein and fat. There's no carbohydrate. And that protein and fat is highly unstable, especially in the body, our human body, which has a body temperature, high body temperature. So immediately that starts to break down and decompose. And by the time that animal protein reaches the lower part of the colon or the intestine, it begins active decomposition. What does that mean, active decomposition? Well, if you leave a dead chicken out on your table in your kitchen, 3 or 4 days later, what happens? You have a toxic bacterial stew. All right. And you have to be incredibly careful about handling that stuff. Well, the same thing happens inside the body. Toxic bacterial stew. And this is directly nourishing, serving as food for the opportunistic and potentially harmful bacteria. It's adding reinforcements to them. Okay? This is a totally different situation than eating plant food. Okay? And in that situation, the body's immune system, either one of 2 things happens. Number 1 is it's totally occupied, nonstop in fighting the bacteria that are being produced in the biome. So that means when something like COVID-19 enters the lung, the immune system is too preoccupied. It's too weakened, too stressed out to adequately neutralize and deal with that. The second thing is because the immune system is constantly being mobilized and stimulated by animal protein, all right, the immune system is too, something like hair trigger. And so whenever there's an infection, then it overcompensates, over mobilizes. And in the case of COVID-19, that's known as a cytokine storm, where the body's own immune system attacks lung tissue, attacks the heart. Okay. Either of those situations is not good. And both are the result of primarily animal food. Although I might add, factors such as antibiotics and refined sugar do also play a role. And their role is to weaken the body's immune system. Okay? So everyone knows if you take antibiotics, then you have digestive problems for a number of weeks or months after that require the adjustments in diet. Okay? So let's see then, if that's what happens with the bad bacteria, let's see how we can strengthen and activate and harmonize the good bacteria in the biome and thus make our immune system much more resistant, okay, to infection. So that involves, again, basing our diet primarily on plant food. 85% or more of our day-to-day eating should be plant. And within that plant food, we should take as our main food seeds, grains. Okay, grain itself is the most accessible form of seed that we can eat because it's cooked and becomes soft, very easily digestible. And then secondly is that for protein, additional protein, not meat, but beans and bean products as our secondary food after grain. So the combination of grain, and when I say grain, I mean whole grain, not white rice or white bread, but brown rice, whole barley, whole millet, those type of foods. Those whole grains, when eaten in combination with beans or fermented bean products from Asia, such as the miso, tempeh, shoyu, soy sauce, that combination, grain and bean, gives us a very, very sustainable source of protein and carbohydrate. In other words, we can maintain that optimal 7-to-1 ratio between carbohydrate and protein. And in the case of this type of diet that I'm describing, the carbohydrate is not the bad type of carbohydrate, which people have in their minds, right? Carbohydrate is bad. No, this is the good carbohydrate. This is the complex carbohydrate rather than simple or refined carbohydrate, simple sugar. Okay, so for example, brown rice is the complex chains of glucose. Many molecules are there in a tightly bound chain that's part of a complete nutritional package. Okay, and those carbohydrates don't enter the bloodstream without effort. They're not absorbed instantly. You have to first cook them, all right, and soften them, melt the hard fiber in those grains. Then you have to further crush that by chewing, mixing with saliva, and mechanically crushing with your predominantly grain crushing teeth, the 20 molars and premolars out of 32 teeth, right? That's another ratio that we should be aware of as well. And then step by step, digesting, completing that process. And then by the time that broken down plant matter, by this time it's already broken down practically into glucose itself and other nutrient factors, reaches the small intestine, then it's absorbed into the body. And in so doing, that is expending calories, by the way. But the so-called bad carbohydrates, things like white rice, white bread, refined sugar, these are very rapidly, they don't require much chewing, first of all, and are rapidly absorbed into the bloodstream, bypassing that entire digestive process for the most part, spiking the blood sugar level, causing the pancreas to constantly be releasing insulin. Okay? And so those so-called bad carbohydrates are the carbohydrates associated with type 2 diabetes. Whereas the good carbohydrates, whole grains, beans, and vegetables, are actually diminishing type 2 diabetes, reducing its incidence and even helping people recover from it. Okay. By the way, in discussing this diabetes, it's important to remember that the vast majority of people who had complications, serious complications with COVID-19, were already sick, already had compromised immune systems. So a question I'd like to ask the medical world: yes, we appreciate very much the dedication and bravery of frontline responders in this crisis. There's no doubt those people are above and beyond the call of duty. However, why does the medical system as a whole wait? Why is it taking a passive attitude, waiting until a crisis like this happens? Why is it not directing its tremendous resources into reducing so-called comorbidities, reducing heart disease, reducing high blood pressure, reducing diabetes, reducing all of these so-called immune compromising conditions which lead people to be very susceptible to the COVID-19? I would like to see all these resources directed in that direction, rather than being passive and not educating the public properly about how to maintain their health so as to avoid or minimize the risk when something like COVID-19 appears. This is a huge question. We have to ask ourselves, why? Why is our medical profession failing in this regard? Literally failing, with a few exceptions. People like Dr. Neil Bernard, Dr. John McDougall, and others have, for over the years, been almost alone in calling for nutritional and dietary and lifestyle education to reduce these comorbidities, so the population is not vulnerable. Okay? And why the medical profession at large has not taken this as its main course of action, to me, remains a puzzle. Really puzzling and really questionable. Okay. So again, plant food and animal food, microbiome, the strength of the body's, the vast ecosystem, the health of that vast internal ecosystem is very much conditioning our immune response. Okay. Let me then bring up the whole further benefit of this plant-based approach. Okay. Grain-based, vegetable-based, bean-based approach to our diet, which is not new, by the way. This is the diet of our ancestors all over the world. It wasn't until the 20th century that animal food became so prevalent, and that includes dairy food, by the way, because of the rise of these industries. Before that, there was small local farming. There was no huge meat industry. Okay, I think it's now something like, 4 or 5 corporations are controlling 80% of meat production in this country right now. Very concentrated. It wasn't that way 100 or 200 years ago at all. Okay. So, what are these benefits? Well, a plant-based diet based on grains, beans, and vegetables is very rich in 2 important factors that strengthen directly the microbiome. And the first is what is called prebiotic elements. Prebiotics are essentially undigested, resistant plant starch and fiber that pass intact into the colon. And when they enter the colon, they begin to ferment. And that breakdown of those plant fibers that creates food for the 85% beneficial bacteria in the colon. So in other words, your diet is prebiotic rich and it's nurturing, supporting every day, providing nourishment for the beneficial bacteria in your body. Think about that. So that means practically every category of food in a plant-based macrobiotic diet is doing that, is acting as the prebiotic nourishment for your beneficial bacteria. And in so doing, directly strengthening the body's immune system. Directly. Okay? And then second, a whole food plant-based macrobiotic diet is rich in probiotics. I always get the two confused. Probiotics. And probiotics are naturally fermented foods in which beneficial bacteria are allowed to develop. We call these fermented foods, right? And a leading example from the European nutritional patterns traditionally was sauerkraut, is sauerkraut, fermented pickled cabbage. And sauerkraut, what's happening is as it sits there with salt, a little bit of salt, to control the fermentation, actually, bacteria from the atmosphere around the kitchen or pantry begin to digest, break down the tough plant fibers in the cabbage, the leaves, okay? Softening them, making them easier to chew, easier to digest, quicker to assimilate. And those bacteria are beneficial. They're the kind of bacteria that we want to have in our biome. In other words, they're adding reinforcements. These foods are adding reinforcements to the beneficial 85% bacteria, good bacteria in the biome. So that's one reason why, right? Fermentation. Naturally fermented foods are found in all cultures because people understood. Together with cooking is also found in every culture. Cooking and fermentation are helping, assisting the body in its assimilation and absorption of nutrients, plus helping strengthen, condition, okay, the microbiome. So our approach is, yes, plant-based, but cooked food and fermented foods as the mainstays of our diet, not raw foods. Yes, we're not against raw food, but majority should be cooked. Please think about, right, who are our cousins in the natural world who are plant eaters? For example, the chimpanzee, the gorillas, right? They're eating. Chimpanzee is basically a fruitarian, and the gorilla is eating like plants. Okay. They don't cook. They don't make sauerkraut, as far as I've heard. But what do they have to do? Well, they have to spend 6-7 hours a day munching, trying to break down and chew. In other words, 1/3 of their day is spent chewing, eating. Doesn't leave much time for having fun in other ways or inventing things, does it? Human beings, much shorter time because of cooking and fermentation. All right. Also, there's a lot of evidence that chewing the plant fibers is helping the health of the brain. So one study recently appeared showing the chewing reduces the incidence of Alzheimer's disease. And many of the people, senior people in old age homes, are not chewing because they have dental problems, number one. Number two, the type of food they're being served is almost like baby food. Okay? Spoon fed. And that is the exacerbating the progression of dementia and Alzheimer's. Whereas those who chew actively, this is bringing blood flow into the brain and stimulating. And plant-based grains, right? Grains, beans, vegetables are meant to be chewed. Meant to be chewed. So that means our mental clarity is also being stimulated by that type of diet. Okay. So again, all things are pointing to a plant-based macrobiotic diet, all indications. And my hope, real hope, is that this is a wake-up call, this COVID-19 situation. Already some commentators are saying this may be a quantum shift in America and the modern world's dietary pattern. Quantum shift away from meat and animal food and towards plant-based eating. Okay? So if that's the case, and I believe it is, then it's very important from that point forward that correct information and education be made available so that, yes, people are transitioning away from meat, away from dairy, towards plant-based, but there's a huge discrepancy there between what we call smart vegan or smart plant-based, and the opposite of that is simply chaotic and unsustainable veganism or plant-based eating. And the whole difference is between smart and sustainable and chaotic and unsustainable. The difference is, number one, the grain is the main food and bean is the secondary food for your sustainable protein every day. And number two, cooking every day. And I know that there's been some movement around the Bay Area. I'm assuming our audience is in the Bay Area. Lynn, I'm not sure if that's the case, but I'm assuming it. To move or to pass the ordinances, town ordinances, city ordinances, banning future gas, the cooking, natural gas, in favor of electricity. This is a colossal mistake. Colossal mistake. This is throwing out the baby with the bathwater. The impact of the clean natural gas is far less than other fossil fuels. And among all of the available fuel sources, this is still clean and provides the necessary energy that we need in our day-to-day cooking. Electricity is quite simply not cooking. Okay? Please know, okay, the motors, the generation of electricity in a power station is either through nuclear or coal. And basically what it is, it's coming from metals, magnetic metals, which are spinning and generating electricity, magnets. So the source of that charge is the metallic, heavy metal, dense energy, similar to that at the surface of in the center of the Earth. Whereas where is the wood? The original cooking fuel was wood or charcoal or straw. What are they? They are captured sunlight, right? Plants are capturing, trees are capturing over the course of their lifetime, storing that sunlight in their bulk, in their form. And then we burn that. And the heat and the light that comes off of the wood is the sunlight. Okay, now that's kind of ideal, and it's not practical in today's world. So what do? Well, for the time being, until we come up with a system of sustainable wood harvesting and being able to manage that, for the time being, the best option is gas cooking, clean natural gas. And that is also, don't forget, captured sunlight. Sunlight that was captured by plants millions of years ago and stored. And then when you burn that, that is again releasing the sun's energy in the form of heat and the flame, okay? Heat and light. So to pass ordinances banning that in favor of highly mechanical and artificial electricity is really quite upside down and short-sighted. And I urge the friends who want to, yes, they want to minimize climate change and fossil fuels, but please don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Okay. And all of that, quite frankly, is simply covering up the fact that we still haven't mastered the world of energy yet. How to use the actually infinite energy that's in our environment, like Nikola Tesla talked about. Because of our lack of ability to do that, we're sacrificing. And I know that the many restaurant and professional chefs were completely opposed to this effort. And I heard there were lawsuits even. They were suing the town, I think maybe Berkeley. The Restaurant Association was suing it because there's no more gourmet cooking. There's no more ethnic cooking if everything has to be done on an electric range. Quite frankly, it's depressing, electrically cooked food. And cooking itself becomes depressing rather than the infinitely creative. Okay? So let's be smart in everything we do. So again, just to sum up, the relationship that we need to be most aware of is that between diet and natural immunity. And the intermediary between diet and natural immunity is the body's microbiome, this vast ecosystem, which is benefiting us. And plant-based foods, prebiotic, and probiotic, macrobiotic, rich foods, right, are the optimum for supporting and creating a healthy ecosystem. And by the way, also creating a healthy world planetary ecosystem. So the health of the environment is equal to the health of our internal environment. You know, like off the Gulf of Mexico now, we have so-called dead zones. And I think you should be aware that those are the result of modern agriculture and food processing, runoff from the waste of the gigantic feedlots, animal protein feedlots, okay, and all of the waste that they're generating, okay, plus fertilizer, which is again basically nitrogen based, like the animal protein, the waste, okay, nitrogen based. All of that is going into the Gulf of Mexico, collecting down through the Mississippi into the Gulf and killing all of the beneficial organisms there and allowing the organisms to develop that monopolize all of the oxygen and kill off the beneficial beneficial organisms. Well, if you're eating a lot of heavy meat and animal food, you are walking around with a dead zone in your intestine, just like the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. So if we want to clean up not only our internal ecology, but also the external ecology of our planet, we have to move away as much as we can from animal food toward a plant-based macrobiotic diet. Okay, so those are my comments. Lynn, are you there? Can we
Thank you. Fantastic. That was really, really great. You know, my microbiome has been very much on the radar in San Francisco area as far as like this eating your own bowel type intestinal. We've been, you know, doing this whole thing instead of just dietary, and it's been really strange to me. So I'm so glad you brought that up. And I'm just like, I'm so baffled by why people just didn't see the opposite, you know, and how, you know, as a nurse, you brought up a lot of different ideas. I've been working in the elder care now for 12 years, and I work for a while and then I get so sick to my stomach from how people are treated and what they're eating and how they're taken care of. And so you brought up some amazing ideas about chewing, which I thought was really great, and the mental clarity of chewing. I guess one of my questions for you would be, I wondered a little bit about the raw diet, because a lot of people argue it all the time in warmer climates. And I got the chewing part very clearly from you. But I think if you could just like go into that a little bit more, that might be helpful. I think what I was told way back, I was at Kerpalo, you know, for quite a while. I trained that kitchen macrobiotic. And the people on raw food diet would just kind of like be so wobbly spiritually. They weren't sturdy. in their thinking. And it was really interesting to watch. And, you know, I'd come back to the Kushi Institute and cook there, and then I'd go to the Sufi abode. And then, you know, the three organizations were just so powerful for me to just like
Yep.
dance between, because they all gave gifts. You know, they all gave these amazing gifts. But Michio had the more flexibility than any yogi at Kripalu than I had seen. And, you know, so it was just a really good playground for me to study and understand. But the raw food, what I was told is when you're eating raw food diet, the plants don't go through the seasons, and they don't spiritually align themselves, you know, through the wind and the rains.
That's a
and
good point. Very good.
yeah, yeah.
The other
and
point, Lynn, is this. The main point is
Mhm.
that grain and beans should be our main human foods, okay? There's no question about that. Those are plant foods.
Right.
And there's simply no way to eat those raw.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way you can chew. I don't know if you ever tried chewing raw brown rice or raw azuki.
Yeah.
rice.
No.
Yeah. You spent the whole morning and still nothing was happening, right? So there's no way that we can take those raw. So they have to be, some cases, soaked and then cooked to soften the tough plant fibers. So if we're on a raw food diet, that rules out grain and bean right off the bat.
Yeah.
Unless they're sprouted. I don't know when they're sprouted. Have you had sprouted rice? Is it edible?
I haven't had sprouted rice. I've had sprouted
And
beans.
what our friends do, what they tend to do, since they're not cooking and chewing,
Yeah.
is they let an electric food processor do their chewing for them.
Right.
And they wind up having unchewed baby food,
Yeah.
smoothies and all this, not chewing. This is going to lead to Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah. Or mental health in general, you know?
Okay, so like you say, they were kind of soft on their, you know, their direction in life. That's because this food is like scattered electronically. So
yeah, I tried to have this argument with my son. He's moving into a house. He's moving to Hawaii and moving to a house with electric. And he said, "That's my only downturn." I said, "Yeah, it's going to be a big downturn." And he was like, "We have to figure out how we're going to make solar into a really powerful, be able to have it a cooking, you know, idea."
Yeah,
and I'm wondering.
That's well and good in Hawaii. I don't know how well it's going to go in New Hampshire, but let's see.
So it's definitely challenging. I like what you brought up about the environment as well. You know, how we're working through, you know, the environmental ideas. And that's been my specialty, even at the store back in Ithaca. And my specialty was, before macrobiotics, I became ill from Ajax, you know, putting Ajax on my, you know, tubs and all. So we became chemical-free house by 1984, and I didn't meet you till 1987. Right. But I think this is a huge piece that Alex brought up with the chemicals and the fertilizer, because I've been working a lot with agriculture. A lot of people watching are from Pakistan today. So it might be nice. Yeah, it might be nice for you to touch base, you know, what you're thinking about that whole journey, because we're starting the natural food movement over there. And we have a farm, and we have a farm school, and we have a school.
Well, so let's organize, Lynn. Let's organize the IMI, International Macrobiotic Institute. Let's make some kind of special arrangements for our Pakistani students.
Definitely. That would be great.
We'll hold online education to complement what you're doing.
Thank you.
And make some very special arrangements for that.
Yeah,
scholarship type or very much reduced tuition.
Yeah, this is what I've been working for free.
Group rate or something like that. If all the friends can sit around one monitor, we can have a class. Maybe they can meet there and have like 10, 15 students in one class. That's fine. And that can work. Then also, like, American friends who are supporting you can donate to your nonprofit or to our nonprofit to support that as well.
Great. What nonprofit is it? Macrobiotic? What's your nonprofit? So we can put it up.
Planetary Health.
Okay, good. So Planetary Health is Alex and Ed. Talk a little bit about, you know, One Peaceful World, because my work, I just finished a master's in divinity, and I've been working on Torch, the Organization for Realizing Change in Humanity, for 3.5 years. And my work in peace is very strong, but the people of Peace Walkers that I've got going, they're amazing, and they're very very streamlined, very healthy, very solid. I'm just curious about peace work and what you've been up to. We started
Well,
out with One Peaceful World, so I have to ask.
Yeah, everybody wants world peace and world unity. There's no question.
Yeah.
However, present day organizations are frankly incapable of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Present day national governments, such as the US government, is incapable.
Yeah.
And even the United Nations is not capable because it's basically a club of national governments. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to create an Uber or
Mm-hmm.
below the radar using the internet.
Right.
The association of people all over the world who do want world unity.
Yeah.
And who are capable of joining together and erasing national boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and speaking on behalf of the world's population as a whole, not just special interests.
Right.
So
Right.
this is the path to world peace, and the diet that is the foundation of that is very simply the plant-based, the grain and vegetable-based macrobiotic diet. That is the foundation of world peace,
Mm-hmm.
because it eliminates injustice right from the top to the bottom. So that's our effort, is spreading that awareness, and the vocabulary of that we call yin and yang,
Mm-hmm.
complementary opposites. That is the vocabulary of world peace, which
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter what language we speak, we can understand and relate to very easily. So our education itself is education for world peace, nothing else.
That's right. Yeah, unifying principle is what I've been teaching for as long as, for many years, as you have. I've been looking at, I went into a chemistry class. I've been planting seeds at schools in Pakistan because I figured at least the children could start learning about seeds. So I started the first sustainable school in Pakistan. And so we planted organic seeds, and then we had solar. But what the chemistry class did was they asked questions. What about the soil? And I said, well, this is your chemistry class. Let's go. So it's very exciting to me to feel that we could, I talked to Michio, 25 years ago, Michio, we need a school that teaches unifying principles. So I would love your feedback on that and how we could implement that, because we've got about 60,000 children connected to my program in Pakistan, 14,000 in Africa. We're in 9 countries right now.
Great.
So it would be really fun to build Torch Academy in a way that is unifying principle, or your Macrobiotic International School, so that we're working together. And I think this is one of the areas that if we're teaching math and science, and, Michio had the spiral connected to the chart, what am I thinking? Oh my gosh, the elements, the elemental chart. He put it into a spiral, and I thought, this has really got to be studied with health. And I think this is key to where we need to go, as far as education.
Great. So let's work together, right? And make a really nice curriculum.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Great. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank Naomi. Nice to meet her today. And we wish you a beautiful day. And thanks so much for coming on.
Yes, I'd like to just encourage everyone, please move toward a plant-based macrobiotic diet, step by step, and please stay safe and be well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a blessed day.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Well, wasn't that wonderful? He brought up so many ideas around the bacteria, the beneficial bacteria versus the non-bacterial beneficiary of, nitrogen being in animal food and plant food, carbohydrate. You always think that science is always trying to get rid of carbohydrates, but actually whole grain carbohydrates are so important, right? So you have to look into the relationship between whole grain, whole food. So many people in the natural food stores have turned us thinking that shredded wheat is a whole food, but it's actually a crushed whole grain, and the energy is gone from it, right? So you're not getting the actual energy. And so when I think about what Ed was just saying, you're looking at a vibrational energy that you want in your life. You want your positive beneficial bacteria so it can charge all your electrons. As a nurse, electrons and electromagnetic fields are very important. We're bombarded with so many things to turn our energy in the negative realm. So I highly recommend, working in any capacity to look at it. I loved where he went with understanding macrobiotics versus raw, because he went into a different area than I actually go about the electric metallic energy change when you're cooking on electric stoves. And gas stoves are giving you a very beautiful charge. And I've cooked on both because I've lived in places with both. And I will buy a small little gas burner, even though it takes cans, which is probably not as sustainable, but my brown rice and my miso and my higher quality food will always go towards that versus cooking on an electric stove, because the food tastes terrible. You cannot get the food to taste good. So it's a big change to go from gas to electric. So I like my son's idea. And as we finish up this show, I just want to say that next week is looking like it could possibly be Conscious Gems. We're waiting to hear back, which is our group from France. And they're actually a raw food group, so we'll make some good conversation around that. And then, or at least some of the cooks are teaching about raw food. And then the following week, we have a huge special guest, again, Simon Mont, and he is a lawyer, and he works with all different businesses and organizations. And as an entrepreneur, and many of us in the Torch family, we're all entrepreneurs. When you start looking at where do you work together collaboratively, how do you work with powerful ideas, how do you bring people together with powerful ideas, Simon is amazing with that. So I think it's important because of COVID, we're all working from home. I think it is part of our green home idea. So I'm very excited. Someone's asking a question. Tafsir, yeah, virtual trade show. There we go. Yes, we're waiting, sir. I need to have a conversation. But Tafsir is here from Canada. He runs a big event starting on August 4th and 5th. If you want to post it there, feel free. He just has been working out of Canada with the virtual trade shows, and we are co-partnering with Torch Events and Torch Academy. So we hope to really develop this out with you all. So we look forward to talking with you. Thank you so much for coming on to the Green Home. We're doing the work, and you can see our shows. You can go to our show on, I'll give you the banner, actionsofimpact.com/green home. I really hope that you as a community and a really deep level of understanding how your energy is fed, that spiritually you'll be fed so much greater if you eat back to a natural way of life, a natural order of life. And it's an amazing journey. I've been in this world with Esko for over 30 years. I've raised my kids without antibiotics. I've done 3 degrees and raised kids as a single mom. And there's nothing better than putting a pot of brown rice on my stove and knowing where my energy will go and how much energy I have after I'm eating a very good diet. So he made great ideas. I hope you go back, if you just came on, go back and listen to what he has and what he's saying. It's a great, great opportunity for you to take charge in the last 3 shows. They're posted on Eco Inspired Living. So please feel free to see us, and I look forward to the next show next week. Join us again, 9 a.m. Saturday, Pacific time, 9 p.m. Pakistan. And that gives you a little bit of an idea. The East Coast, it's 12 o'clock. Have a beautiful day. Peace and best.